So we're close to a record government shutdown. And the question that comes up is what kind of prolonged effect will this have on the economy and particularly business? Will it be short term? Is it like, well, we're just going to go back to normal, or will there be other impacts? And could this go on for a while longer? And here we are at the Wealthability Show, once again, talking about the government shutdown. I thought we would not have another discussion because I thought it would be over by now, but this is such an important topic. We really need to be talking with experts and different types of experts. And we have an expert with us today, John Diamond, who has just an amazing background. And actually, like he's crazy like I am, John. I can tell you're crazy like I am because you have multiple positions and constantly doing multiple different things. So if you would, John, just give us a little of your background and what you're focused on right now.
So I'm John Diamond. I'm the director for the Center for Tax and Budget Policy at Rice University's Baker Institute. So I focus on economic policy, particularly anything related to state, local, federal, or international public finance issues. So how do we finance our lives? How do we finance the government? What are the most efficient ways to do that? And what are the consequences of those investments? So I really, what it depends on the day, what I'm most interested in, ranging from tariffs to tax reform, to the effects of depopulation on local infrastructure spending, to the government shutdown. And so that's a little about me. And basically, I just like studying interesting topics.
I love it. That's what we love doing here on the Wealthability Show. So love having you with us. So let's talk about this government shutdown. The last, if I recall, the last couple of government shutdowns were Republicans shutting the government down. Now we have the Democrats shutting the government down. And first question is by the time this airs, if the government shutdown's still going, then it will be a record government shutdown because we're closing in as we're recording this. What do you just basically, before we get to the causes and the solutions, let's talk about what are the effects of a government shutdown on the economy and particularly on businesses that don't, and I'm not talking about businesses that do work with the government, but I'm talking about Main Street.
So this is kind of like when someone says, are we in a recession? And one person says, feels like no, we're not, and the person that's lost their job feels like they are.
Right.
So I want to start with that distinction because the first thing I'm going to say is the shutdown really doesn't have very large impacts. It's just in some sense, if you look across time, even the longest shutdown in history had an aggregate impact of a permanent impact of 3 billion. So the 2018, 2019 shutdown, the short run impact was about $11 billion. About 8 of that was just temporary money that ended up getting back into the system eventually, and we were left with a $3 billion permanent cost. So, that's at that time, that was 0.02% of GDP. So overall, I'm not, I'm not here to say the sky is falling, that the shutdown will have limited impacts. Now, those limited impacts can be crucial to some people, and particularly businesses. Government employees are going to have a hard road because they're not going to get paid, but they will get paid on the back end. And so most people can find a way to borrow money, to use a credit card, to use their savings, to make it until they get back pay. And so they should be okay. There are obviously some households that don't have that freedom that'll be hurt. But there are some private businesses, especially businesses located around a high concentration of government employees, or those that get government contracts or work in an industry that is dependent on government contracts. And they could see an outcome that's not as nice. I mean, this will be a real burden on some private businesses. It just won't be a huge burden across the spectrum.
Got it. So let's talk about what kind of the issues are because they're coming to a head here. It appears, at least from looking at it from the outside, and I'm sure you've got more inside perspective, that this between SNAP, which is what we used to call food stamps, and Medicaid, and the Affordable Care Act. Those three things seem to be what's driving the Democrats. It is what is perceived is what I'm perceiving. Is that accurate? Or is there something else that's actually driving this shutdown?
Yeah. So it's mainly being driven by two things, and you're basically right in that there's something called enhanced premium tax credits. So we had Obamacare, the ACA, Affordable Care Act, which passed in 2012. Under the Affordable Care Acts, there are things called premium tax credits that go to help people pay for their insurance premiums. We enhanced those premium tax credits just after the pandemic in ARPA, so the American Recovery uh, Act. And those enhancements lasted 2 years, and then they were extended again under the infrastructure, uh, the
Okay.
Inflation Adjustment Act. And and that extension expires at the end of this year. Now, I think it's important to say both of those policies passed with purely Democratic votes only. So not one single
Mm.
Republican ever voted for this, what they call the enhanced premium tax credit, which is the larger tax credit. And so the Democrats want that to be extended. It was passed with a Democratic president, a Democratic House, and a Democratic Senate, and they made it a temporary provision, more than likely to control the budgetary costs. And now they've gotten to the end of the road and they want to use the shutdown to kind of hold the Republicans and the rest of us hostage to extend these credits. They also are interested in undoing some of the savings that were passed in the One Big Beautiful Bill, work requirements and those types of things for healthcare provisions. And so that's what they want. The enhanced credits are worth about 360 billion over 10 years. So if you pass it, they will increase the deficit over the next 10 years by 360 billion. The rest of the things they're asking for bring the total to about 1.5 trillion over 10 years. And that's getting rid of the pay-fors in the One Big Beautiful Bill. So they're asking for a lot. If you look at all prior shutdowns, we've never had such an ask from the side that was trying to shut down the government. Donald Trump's border wall request in 2018, 2019 was just looking for a few $1 billion. Nothing, and one-time expenditures, nothing close to what the Democrats are asking for now. And in fact, in no previous shutdown has there ever been such a big ask by the party asking for something and shutting down the government.
So why? I mean, it just seems like you say you mentioned that okay, the Republicans didn't vote. Not one Republican voted for the ACA enhanced premiums, and these are COVID premiums, right? I mean, this is a COVID benefit.
Right.
The Medicaid, of course, that's purely Republican. What do the Democrats hope to get out of this? Do they really think that the Republicans are going to cave?
I think they thought they had the upper hand because a lot of these credits go to middle Americans. So the expansion was that they increased that they lowered. So what happens with the credits is under the original law, the credit was, and this gets into little details, but the credit was you had to pay up to 10% of your income. So they lowered that to 8.5%. So lower income people get like a really small 1.5% of their income benefit. This is spread over a year. This is not a huge amount of money. But then they extended it. So it used to be that if you made more than four times the poverty level, so that's for a family of four, that's $120,000, you were not eligible for the subsidies or the tax credit, premium tax credits. This opened it up. So the pandemic said, no, let's give it to people that are making more than four times the federal poverty level. So that is where all the money is in this. And
Oh.
so the Democrats thought, well, these people are middle income. A lot of them are from states that didn't extend Medicaid. And so they're red state middle income people. And I think they thought this is going to be a political slam dunk. We're going to force the Republicans to do what we want. That has not worked out. I don't see the Republicans, you know, falling for this, or at least I don't see them acquiescing to the demands of the Democrats anytime soon.
So, I mean, what happens? Because, one of the consequences of this, of course, is that SNAP, SNAP needs that budget passed so that it can be funded. And if SNAP's not funded in Arizona, they estimate 900,000 people will need to be fed in November, for November, just because they're not getting SNAP. That's almost 20% of our population in Arizona. So it's an enormous number of people that are being affected over policy arguments that are not SNAP policy arguments. And the Democrats seem to have said, we're not going to just fund SNAP. So they've actually dug their heels on that too. So help us understand what's, what do you see the outcome being here? I mean, by the time this airs, we may know the outcome, but let's
No.
let's kind of speculate a little bit.
Well, so I started with the economic effects are not that big, and up to today, they aren't. But come November 1st, when SNAP payments stop going out, that's going to definitely increase the economic pain. And on the other hand, every week that you go, the economic impacts get bigger. And there's a reason why this is now becoming one of the largest or one of the longest shutdowns ever, because the economic pain grows as the shutdown lengthens. If we get past the 35 days, which is the longest shutdown ever, uh, those effects really start to build on one another, and that could really change my initial statement. A 60-day shutdown is more than twice as bad as a 30-day shutdown. It's not linear. It builds on itself, and the economic impacts grow over time. So I believe what will end the shutdown is just just the amount of economic pain that Americans are going to begin feeling, November 1st and beyond, as it stretches every paycheck that federal employees miss. Uh, the pain ratchets up, and the political pressure will ratchet up with it. I think eventually the Democrats are going to have to cave and say, look, uh, we don't have to pass it under before we open the government. We just agree that we'll have this discussion after we open the
Right,
government.
because the Republicans had refused to have the discussion prior to the
Sure.
shutdown, right?
Exactly.
So there, we call it a government shutdown, but we know that a lot of what we call essential services have continued, but those people aren't getting paid, right? So, for example, air traffic controllers, I'm about to go on a very long flight. I'm going, wait a minute. I don't like the idea that these air traffic controllers aren't being paid. How long do you think that they'll go and still stay on the job?
Well, so Secretary Duffy, Transportation Secretary, stated yesterday, so prior to the shutdown, about 5% of delays in the air traffic system were due to personnel issues. As of yesterday, 53% of
Wow.
delays were due to air traffic control issues. That will continue to grow and it will grow quickly. And I think if the shutdown goes another 2 weeks, you're gonna see pretty much some real chaos in the air traffic system. It just gets harder and harder to work without pay, and people can only make it for so long before they have to just uh, you know try to find something else to do.
Yeah. It I'm, I'm thinking of I think it's the Burbank Airport that they are okay, pilots talk to each other, right? That they don't have enough air traffic control to actually have the air traffic control do its job. So they're taking off and landing based on pilots controlling themselves,
Yeah,
basically, which is a little more than just a little scary.
very
And
scary.
it seems like that's where the big impact of the economy. I think the first impact, of course, is SNAP because you have so many people that are depending on that, and they're going to be they're going to be really unhappy, and that and they're gonna complain. I mean, you're gonna hear about it. I think, but then when you have where I think about business being impacted, travel is a big part of business. So, can you continue on in business when you can't be traveling? There are a lot of businesses that depend on travel, and a lot of that kind of shut down. So it seems like it could snowball really quickly, and then the economic impacts could be very long term.
And it does grow, and the impacts will get bigger, and we could feel larger impacts. So again, a 35-day shutdown was about a $3 billion impact. If you go a bit past that, it could be bigger. Now, the other part of this, though, is that 35-day shutdown was on a much smaller, so we call these partial shutdowns. So what happened in 2018, 2019 is parts of the government had been funded through appropriations bills. And so those parts stayed open. This is a much broader shutdown,
Mm.
meaning it's affecting a much larger portion of the government. And so it's going to have a bigger impact. So what I kind of stated is really bottom line. Next thing, we didn't have the food stamp issue in the last shutdown that we're having here. That's going to make it a bigger thing. And then also, we're just in a little bit more of a precarious economy right now
Yeah.
than we have been. Labor numbers are going down, layoffs are increasing across the labor force.
Sure, we have AI coming on that's
It's
reducing the need for labor in a lot of areas. Let's say that I'm not sure why they would do it, but let's say the Republicans did agree to some um, compromise here from a tax standpoint, because you've got I mean, you're CEO of the tax policy organization, right?
yes.
What do you think the tax impact is, or is the only tax that's going to be affected inflation because of the additional deficit?
So, I mean, the budget impacts would be, like we discussed. I mean,
You're talking
depending on what
about like
they
$2 trillion
agree to,
dollars.
you're talking about between 400 and 1.5 trillion dollars over 10 years. Uh, that's a significant impact when you look. We already have budget deficits running 6% of GDP. We already have 38 trillion in national debt. This is a significant number, which only makes solving our budget problems that much harder. And, I've been arguing on my podcast and in my writings that we need to be solving this through regular order because, regular budgetary process is not hostage negotiation budgetary processes because we face too many fiscal problems to just have a free pass on this. Second, on the inflation front, that's a really interesting one because the Fed just cut rates. Inflation's still at 3%, still a percentage point above the Fed's uh, target, yet the labor market is weakening. Now, short-term impact, it, the whole food stamp crisis and all of this, all the missed wages, could actually act to bring
Right.
inflation down because people will have less demand. There will be a surplus of goods that could reduce inflationary pressures. The bad thing is, a month from now, when people get all of this back pay, there's going to be like
Sure.
COVID,
And just like COVID.
there's going to be this flood of money into the system, which is going to jack up inflationary pressures. And so I kind of see it being the worst timing because we're going to get this one-time inflationary kick right at the end of this shutdown. And I think that's going to be problematic.
So let's since we you opened the door to the fiscal challenges that we have at the government and the budget deficit. I'm curious. I'm always asking, what's your solution? Because there are some people say, well, higher taxes. Other people that have been on the Wealthability show that say much lower taxes are necessary in order to reduce the deficit. What's your solution?
So we need to reform all of it. There needs to be reform on the spending side. So if you look at the numbers, taxes are running at 17.3 or 4% of GDP. Spending is running at 23% of GDP. Taxes are projected to go from 17.4 to maybe 18% over the next 20 years. Spending is projected to go from 23% to 27% of GDP. So number one, we have to bring spending down. That's just starting point A. Spending, we got to get that down to 21, 22% of GDP. On the tax side, you know, I am not one that would argue we need to raise tax rates in terms of raising marginal tax rates. I think we need to keep those low. But there's a lot of spending in the tax
Yeah.
system that we could
Yes.
start to get rid of, which would bring revenues up. And I'm not against bringing revenues up to 18, 19% of GDP. Let's get it so that spending's 21 and taxes are 19 or somewhere around there. That's, we can vote on what those exact numbers should be, but let's bring spending way down. Let's quit spending through the tax code. Let's reduce the child tax credit. Let's do other, get rid of the state and local income tax deduction, which benefits,
Yes.
things.
That's the dumbest tax policy we've got right now is
Exactly.
increasing that state and local tax deduction. I was just mentioning the other night on a webinar that I'd be okay with the tax deduction if it was only property taxes because that's the regressive tax that we
Yes.
have, right? Is the property tax. The income tax is progressive, so you pay more if you make more. So okay. Um,
Yeah.
right? But so the challenge is okay, so you're empathetic. Okay. My wife's very empathetic, and you have all of these people who are struggling, and they really are struggling. I mean, the rich really are getting a lot richer and they're pushing asset prices up, and the middle class is actually getting poorer. So, you're talking about, are you really going to take away Medicaid from these people? Are you really going to take away the tax credits for, the health insurance, which some of these ACA plans are projected to go up 400%
Yeah.
next year. So, what spending do you cut then? Do you cut military spending? I mean, what do you cut?
Well, I mean, so you can cut, I think we have to go back to kind of this 1983 Social Security reform where we increased the retirement age. I mean, we have to cut, look, it's all entitlement spending, Social Security and Medicare. We
Right.
have to find a way to spend less money on that. And then something like this thing, the enhanced premium credit. I'm not arguing that we shouldn't have a tax credit. I think the Obama era premium subsidies are generous. They're generous from people that have income up to four times the poverty level, and that seems about right to me. But it was Amy Klobuchar, senator, that had the example of this hypothetical couple I wasn't hypothetical. They're an actual couple, Bill and Kelly, who were, or Shelley, I think it was. But anyways, it's a retired couple. They make $120,000. They retired in their mid 50s. Uh, and they basically say we're rich except for healthcare expenditures. Well, they're getting a huge
Right.
subsidy and they're going to face this hit. But I'm like, okay, well, there are working people who are in their mid 50s that are working that get employer sponsored health insurance. Their premiums are going up, which will either drive their wages down or push their cost up. Why are we treating these two couples differently? In my mind, that's not right. So I think things like that, we need to cut those type of expenditures. That's where we have to go
Got
in
it.
and kind of
So,
cutting
so, so a lot of it is,
people cut it for low income people, but for people
got it.
making four times the poverty level and you're retired, well, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't be retired just yet.
Well, there's a good one. And one last question on this one, because it's a hot spot for me because I was one of the first ones to be in that higher retirement age, right? And of course, I haven't retired, and I don't plan to retire because I don't like the idea of being retired.
Mhm.
Because you, in my world, in the entrepreneur world, you retire, you die literally.
Yeah.
A lot of people die within a year or two after being retired if they're entrepreneurs, because you lose your purpose, you lose the whole point, because you're not retiring from something that you dislike. You like doing what you're doing, so why would you retire? But why not? Why is there so much push to leave the retirement age for people who haven't even entered the workforce? Because we're not, I mean, we weren't talking in 83, that was for people like me who just barely had entered the workforce, right? And that's who it applied to. Were people in my age group that, okay, we raised it. Why don't we index, for example, the retirement age to to the lifespan?
It's a really good question. I don't know why we haven't done that. I think that uh, partly it's just hard to do. I do think there are some issues like you and I. I mean, I'm like you. I can work along as long as my brain is working. I'm going to be
Right.
able to continue to work. I see that there are some professions where, it's a lot harder to continue doing the job
It is.
into your older ages. But, maybe there's ways that we could get around that. And I actually think AI and robotics are actually going to solve some of those issues for us.
Good point.
Uh, and they're going to require us to think about altering how we collect taxes as well. I mean, I'm real curious right now about what does the share of wage income look like, 30 years from now if a lot of wage jobs are being replaced
Yeah.
by capital slash AI.
Right. Right. The
And
question
so,
the question is because back in prior to 1944, right, employees didn't pay taxes on their wages at all. So they were exempt. Wages were exempt, and it wasn't until 1944. And now all of a sudden, most of the taxes come from wages. So is there? It seems to me like perhaps we need to kind of shift the who we're taxing and how we're taxing based on the economy. The economy became a very service economy. It became very driven by employees, and so that's where you got your wages. Now it's being driven highly by capital. As it gets driven more and more by AI and technology, then perhaps there needs to be a change. It's very, very interesting. So let me ask you final question as we wrap up. Uh, John, what are a couple of things that you would recommend people do right now to deal with these uncertainties like government shutdowns and constant changes, even constant changes in regulations?
you mean like do financially?
Yeah, I know. How does a business owner deal with these changes that, I mean, we've talked about from AI to government shutdown to, tax changes in the way the taxes work. What do business owners do?
That is the hardest question. If I could answer that question right now, I'd be a wealthy man. I think business owners are in an incredibly hard place between not only the shutdown and the changing, regulatory and technological issues we're facing. I think business owners have been hit by the uncertainty of tariffs and it's not as much as if we have a tariff, it's are we going to have a tariff and at what rates are there going to be? Just there's so much change from day to day on so many fronts of the economy that I think a lot of business owners are doing exactly what they should do. Sit tight, look ahead, and see what happens. Don't make any sudden changes based on policies that may not last that long. I don't think the smart thing right now is to change the way you do everything when we're in such a kind of a swell of the wave. I don't think it's going to look the same tomorrow as things look today.
I love that. I think that's terrific advice and really being adaptable. The word pivot came up so much during COVID, and
Yes.
now it's like, you can't pivot because pivot's like this permanent shift, right? Now you have to actually look at, okay, I do have to look long term, particularly in the AI category, but then short term, I just need to learn how to adapt. And
Maximum flexibility.
maximum flexibility. And, from my standpoint, I look at it from a tax standpoint. How are you flexible in what you're doing from a tax standpoint? How are you flexible in how you operate your business? Our guest has been John Diamond on the Wealthability Show, talking about the shutdown and other economic issues in the government in particular. John, where can we get more information about what you're doing?
I am at the Baker Institute. So if you go to bakerinstitute.org and look for John Diamond, or you can type in, I have a podcast called The Two-Handed Economist. And you can just type in Two-Handed Economist and it should pop up at the Baker Institute. And all of my research or most of my research is online at the bakerinstitute.org. So would love any comments or feedback that people may have.
Great. Thank you so much, John. And thanks everybody for really taking the time to look at bigger issues, broader issues than just your own day-to-day business issues, because it really is going to affect your business. And we do need to learn how to adapt. And when we do learn how to adapt, we're always going to make way more money and pay way less tax. We'll see y'all next time on the Wealthability Show. Thanks for listening to the Wealthability Show. If today's episode gave you a new perspective, remember this: the tax law is not your enemy. It's a roadmap. And when you know how to follow it, you can build real, lasting wealth. If you're a business owner or investor who's tired of overpaying taxes, the Wealthability Accelerator is your next step. You'll have the opportunity to work directly with me for 80% less than my standard rate. And I'll personally guide you through how to change your facts so that you can change your tax. Go to wealthability.com/bonus and apply today. Remember, it's not just what you make, it's what you keep.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.